Welcome to Pulse of the Planet. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In the heart of Europe, Hungary is making a bold and controversial pivot away from its traditional Western allies, turning its gaze toward the BRICS bloc, especially China, whose economic and political influence is rapidly expanding across the globe. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán frames this as a stark choice. Brussels in decline, or sovereignty and stability with rising global powers, arguing that Hungary must adapt to a changing world order. This realignment is shaking the EU's cohesion, raising questions about the future of European unity and shared values. It signals a new era of multipolar competition, where influence is contested and alliances are more fluid than ever before. The post-Cold War dominance of the West is fading, as old certainties give way to new realities. China and the BRICS nations are gaining influence, offering alternative models of development and cooperation. They are seeking to reduce reliance on the US dollar, challenging the financial architecture that has underpinned Western power for decades. Orbán sees opportunity in this global shift, positioning Hungary as a bridge between East and West, a country that can benefit from both worlds, but with a clear and deliberate tilt toward the East, betting on new partnerships to secure Hungary's future. Hungary has stalled Ukraine's EU accession, citing national interests and security concerns, deepening rifts within the Union and fueling heated debates about the direction of Europe. At the same time, Hungary is strengthening economic and energy ties with Russia and China, seeking stability in uncertain times. Orbán argues this is about national survival, securing Hungary's interests as old alliances lose their guarantees and new risks emerge. The world is watching closely. Is Hungary forging a new model of sovereignty and independence, or is it risking isolation and economic peril by drifting too far from its European partners? The 2026 parliamentary election will be a crucial referendum on this high-stakes gamble, determining whether Hungary's new course will endure or be reversed. Hungary's 2004 EU accession was celebrated as a return to Europe, promising prosperity and security after decades behind the Iron Curtain. Early optimism faded after the 2008 financial crisis and Orbán's 2010 rise to power, which brought sweeping constitutional changes and growing conflict with Brussels. Disputes over judicial reforms, media freedom, and migration policies deepened mistrust, especially after Hungary's hardline stance during the 2015 migrant crisis. The EU responded by freezing billions in funding, escalating tensions. Orbán's government now frames the EU as an overreaching force imposing liberal values, while he claims to defend Hungarian sovereignty. This narrative resonates with many Hungarians, fueling support for seeking alternative alliances. The long history of disputes has made Hungary's eastward pivot both a strategic move and a popular act of defiance. At the heart of Hungary's foreign policy is the Orbán Doctrine, an unwavering commitment to uncompromising national sovereignty. This doctrine is not just a political stance but a guiding principle that shapes every major decision made by the Hungarian government. Orbán sees the nation-state as the ultimate authority, firmly resisting any permanent transfer of power to supranational bodies like the European Union. For him, Hungary's independence and self-determination are non-negotiable, even if it means clashing with Brussels. He frames Hungary's choice as one between sovereignty and stability on one side, and Brussels and decline on the other. In Orbán's view, alliances are not about shared values but about pragmatic, transactional relationships driven by national interest and power. This doctrine aligns Hungary with countries like China and Russia, emphasizing non-interference, mutual respect, and the concept of illiberal democracy. Orbán argues that these partnerships allow Hungary to chart its own course, free from Western pressure. Orbán's policies challenge EU norms on shared debt, energy, and social values, insisting on independent decision-making. He often positions Hungary as a defender of traditional values and national interests against what he sees as overreach from Brussels. He opposes deeper EU fiscal integration, warning that it erodes national control and could even risk Hungary's financial stability or lead to bankruptcy. For Orbán, economic sovereignty is as vital as political independence. Hungary's energy policy remains closely tied to Russia, prioritizing security of supply over EU efforts to diversify. Orbán argues that reliable energy is essential for Hungary's future, even if it means defying EU expectations. Orbán believes the West is in decline, and that Hungary must adapt to a rapidly changing multipolar world by diversifying its partnerships. This means looking beyond traditional Western alliances and forging new ties with emerging powers. The pivot to BRICS is seen not as abandoning the West, but as a necessary step for Hungary's survival and prosperity in a world where power is shifting. Orbán insists that Hungary must be flexible and pragmatic to thrive. It's a high-stakes application of a deeply held belief in sovereign nationhood, one that defines Hungary's place in the world and shapes its future direction. Hungary's Eastern opening is more than rhetoric, it's a series of bold moves to deepen ties with BRICS, especially China. Budapest hosts a campus of China's Fudan University and was the first EU state to join the Belt and Road Initiative, modernizing key rail links with Chinese loans. China is now a top investor, with major battery plants positioning Hungary as an EV hub. Trade and diplomatic visits with China are frequent, with Hungary praising China's development model. Despite EU sanctions, Hungary maintains energy deals with Russia, including the PAX-2 nuclear project, citing national interest. Hungary also courts other BRICS members, supporting de-dollarization and a multipolar financial system. While full BRICS membership isn't possible, Hungary acts as the bloc's gateway to Europe. This comprehensive strategy weaves together infrastructure, investment, and diplomacy to anchor Hungary's future in the East. The clash between Budapest and Brussels is embodied in two competing models. The Hungarian model prioritizes workfare, low taxes, and pro-family policies, like lifetime tax exemptions for mothers with 3 or more children. Orbán criticizes the Brussels model for promoting collective debt and progressive taxes, arguing it undermines national responsibility. Domestic policies like tax-free childcare and bonuses for pensioners and law enforcement reinforce the government's approach. The Hungarian model champions cultural homogeneity and Christian traditions, rejecting multiculturalism and progressive social values. EU criticism of Hungary's laws is framed as external interference, while Orbán claims to protect national identity. This ideological battle is about more than economics. It's a fight over the nation's future and European civilization itself. The stark contrast makes compromise between the two models nearly impossible. Hungary's eastward pivot is a high-stakes gamble with both rewards and risks. The government touts Chinese investment and new jobs as vital for growth, especially with EU funds frozen. Energy deals with Russia ensure stable supplies and low costs, while BRICS markets offer new export opportunities. But the EU remains Hungary's main economic partner, and further alienation could threaten access to the single market, critical for its export-driven economy. Dependence on China and Russia brings vulnerabilities, debt risks from Chinese loans and political pressure from Moscow. Critics warn Hungary may be trading one dependency for another, risking long-term sovereignty. The economic calculus is delicate. Orbán bets Eastern partnerships will outweigh the risks of alienating the West. The outcome will shape Hungary's economic fate for years. The world is watching to see if this gamble pays off. In Brussels and across Western capitals, Hungary's recent pivot is being watched with growing alarm. Policymakers and diplomats see it as a direct challenge to the core values and unity that underpin the European Union. The move has sparked urgent discussions about the future of European cohesion, with many fearing that Hungary's actions could set a precedent for other member states to follow. Experts warn that Orbán's repeated vetoes and controversial judicial reforms are eroding trust within the EU. They argue that these steps make Hungary a potential Trojan horse for Russian and Chinese interests, raising concerns about the bloc's security and its ability to act with a unified voice on the world stage. Some analysts acknowledge that Orbán's strategy may be shrewd in the short term, allowing Hungary to extract concessions and play global powers against each other. However, they caution that this approach is risky in the long run, as it could alienate key allies and undermine the security guarantees Hungary has relied on for decades. Economists point out that while Chinese investment brings much-needed jobs and capital, it can also create a dual economy and foster dependency on foreign interests. The long-term benefits of such investments remain uncertain, and some worry about the potential loss of economic sovereignty. Even the new Chinese factories that have sprung up in Hungary are heavily reliant on the country's access to the EU market. Experts agree that a full break with Brussels would be economically devastating, threatening jobs, trade, and Hungary's overall prosperity. Hungary's move is not happening in isolation. It reflects a broader global trend of rising nationalism and growing skepticism toward international institutions, as more countries question the benefits of deep integration. The country now stands as a test case. Can a nation truly opt out of the Western consensus while still remaining inside its institutions and reaping their benefits? the outcome of Hungary's experiment will have implications that reach far beyond its borders, potentially shaping the future of Europe and the global order. Hungary's foreign policy shift has deepened internal divisions. Orban supporters see the eastward pivot as a stand for sovereignty and national pride, reinforced by government media. The opposition and many urban Hungarians fear democratic backsliding and isolation from the West. Protests over Chinese projects highlight concerns about transparency, environment, and foreign influence. The constant EU conflict has polarized society, making nuanced debate difficult and fueling a brain drain among young, educated Hungarians. The 2026 election will be a showdown between Orban's sovereign path and the opposition's call for Western alignment. The result will reveal which vision resonates more with the Hungarian people. Hungary stands at a crossroads, its pivot to BRICS and China now central to national strategy. Orban bets on prosperity and sovereignty through Eastern ties, challenging the post-Cold War European order. Short-term gains, jobs, energy, pride, are weighed against long-term risks, loss of EU funds, eroded trust, and dependency on autocratic powers. Hungary risks isolation within Europe, formally in the West but aligned with its rivals. For the EU, Hungary's defiance exposes institutional weaknesses and forces tough choices about unity and integration. Hungary's journey mirrors global tensions between nationalism and integration, sovereignty, and shared values. The outcome will shape not just Hungary's destiny, but the future of the European project. Whether Hungary becomes a model or a cautionary tale, its path will have lasting consequences for Europe.